What is up, YouTube? This is Will Bezard, once again coming to you from Galloup School and Galloup Studios. And today we're going to talk about guitar necks. Originally, I wanted to do acoustic and electric guitar bodies, and I probably even said that I would in a previous video, but I thought about it a little bit more and I realized that I explained that I usually start with the fretboard and neck. Let's crack straight into it, huh? So there's a couple different things that I'm going to cover as we go through this, and I'm going to tease the next part a little bit. The guitar in that picture on my desktop is also this guitar that I'm going to use as an example. Now, necks can be very tricky, particularly with areas like the wrist and volute area, if you have a volute. If you don't have a volute, it's actually quite a bit easier. But you still have to do some similar techniques with our heel transition. Now, the reason that I like to start with the neck is that it makes designing the body a little bit easier because we have a critical junction being the body joint, right? So I don't really like to start designing the body until I have all of those things figured out, like where the body's going to join the fretboard, what the dimension of the fretboard is. It's a little bit easier to have that information. I don't want to say easier, but it makes a bit more sense to start from that place. It's also important to have, as you just saw me do, an anchor, what I call an anchor or the common reference point. I usually like to place a point right on the middle of the scale length line in my model so that when I'm designing this stuff, I can very easily go back and forth. There we go. I had to group those together so that I can easily go back and forth. A lot of what I do in CAD is just a chaotic mess of kind of seeing how I feel about different shapes and what I want to do. And that's just my workflow. But if I zoom out, you'll see it's kind of how it goes for me, like designing a bridge over here. I had multiple different stages, different things I was trying to, land on something, try something new over here, just kind of having fun with it. So that's something I'd like to emphasize as well. Even if you're doing this for just a job, you got to kind of have some fun in it while you're in here, because I think otherwise it's pretty easy to lose your mind. I like to get started in 2D land here. So what we are looking at is a drawing of a 7-string version of this guitar that I have designed that is also multi-scale. You can see that I have the path of the string and, the center of the string. I've got the end of my scale length. That's not the intonation point, just the scale length. And I began to draw a peg head here, but I think I should back it up and show you how I got to this point, which is going to be different for everyone. But my philosophy for doing a peg head specifically is that I try to aim for form following function. I mean, that's a very old quote. I had to look it up. Louis Sullivan, the American architect, form following function. It's a good way to go about things with a guitar, in my opinion. For me, it helps me a lot in coming up with new shapes because I tend to get kind of overwhelmed with drawing something. So if I use some part of the design which really can't be argued with or removed, it serves as a structure within which I can be creative, and it kind of gives me some rails, a path to follow. Like I said, if I don't have that, I tend to get kind of overwhelmed, and then the design is aimless and I'm lost, and that's no fun at all. So let's see, right away I'm noticing that I don't have a line for the nut, so we're gonna remedy that. A good thing to start with is deciding on your nut width. I usually do a 1/4 inch as standard. I really can't tell you why. It's a number that I just feel good about. I definitely don't like a narrow nut for no reason other than I just like the aesthetic. I like to extend the taper of the fretboard straight up. I think that's really important. And we're just gonna do this actually. That way, when I make my nut, it's a little easier to have a straight edge so that you can get a nice clean fit in that spot. Okay, and then I'll split that line as well because I don't want a continuous line there, at least not right now. This is also an area that when we get into the 3D portion of this, tends to get messy, and if you're not really paying attention and making sure that lines end exactly where they're supposed to be and that you're not ending up with duplicates of stuff, it can become, wow, such a mess so fast. So laying out the tuners. Let's just pretend I don't have any profile here whatsoever. I am going to extend the path of the string straight out. Oh, and actually oh yes it is. Never mind, I was going to say that these don't line up how I would like them to, but they do. I'm also going to go up here and grab a physical tuner. One thing that I love about using Hipshot products is that they have perfect PDFs of their hardware, so you can drop them into a CAD program and design things around them. It's super helpful, especially if you don't have the hardware on hand. As you can see, I usually start with like just a basic version of the tuner, which the outer line is the washer and the inner one is the post. I like to have my strings break off straight onto the peg head, and that's not that important, all things considered. Wait, what am I saying? Some people might argue that that's important for student usability. I just think it's aesthetically pleasing, so that's what I like to do. Yeah, so the first thing that we have to decide is where the first tuner is going to be. We need to leave enough room behind the nut for access to the truss rod if we have one in that spot. Sometimes it's on the other end of the neck, right? For me, in this case, this design does have that. So along the center, it looks like I did 1.441, so about an inch and a half or so. So let's just do an inch and a half. I'm going to place a point on the center and move it 1.5. Okay, and we're going to delete all the rest of this stuff, but I'm going to take note of what my ratio is. So I got an inch between those, and I think it's the same thing on this side. Yes. Sometimes I do it shorter on one side than the other. With a 7-string, when you're trying to fit like 4 and 3, with the strings breaking off of the nut straight, it's kind of difficult to keep them from getting bunched up, particularly where they meet in the middle. So there's been times where I've shortened up the treble side a little bit, but it looks like I did not do that this time. So I'm going to move both of these up and delete all the rest of this stuff. So now I can take this and move it onto my high string on the intersection point, and now I know that that string's going to break off straight onto the post. And here we have 0.683. I'm sure there was a really good reason that I picked such a specific number. I just can't remember at this point in time. So there we go. We have the beginning of it. So for both of these, I'll copy them 1 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me 4, and that gives me 3 on the treble side. And then I'll just copy this onto those intersection points to the corresponding string. Boom. And now we got it. So then I'll go ahead and take this rear view of the tuner and place them on here, just so that I can be certain that they do not collide with one another. What have I done? Oh, I see exactly what I did. There we go. So let that be a lesson to you. It's very, very easy to lose track of what you're doing when you're laying stuff out in Rhino. We've got so many small moving parts here, and it never hurts to just go and double check your stuff. All right, I don't know where that line came from. I think it was left over. So we've got 7 tuners placed on here. It's probably worth mentioning that I'm probably going to rotate these when they're on the guitar, but I'm not going to do that right now. Go ahead and hide these. And from here, what I like to do is make straight lines on the center points, okay, and then offset them 1/2 inch. That's like a good number where the profile of the peg head ends up, you know, pretty comfortably within the range, or inside of the rotation of the tuning machine peg, which is important. So now I'm going to get rid of my strings because they're just noise at this point. I'm going to get rid of these marks that I used to lay them out. And now we have a basic like framework. You'll see that, or you should see now, what I was talking about earlier, where trying to use function of some of the components of the guitar to inform what I'm going to do with its form, its shape or design. And we've successfully done that here. So now I'll just go ahead and extend these lines out. Okay, and obviously, that's not going to work for a peghead design at all. So I also like to extend this line, because when I'm making curves to be the wrist, I like that the curve also follows the taper of the fretboard, or continues to. So we'll draw a curve. It's going to start here, maybe go up to here and come straight out. There, and there. Maybe put that a little higher. Now, with that kind of thing, the specific shape of this, I'm not convinced that there's a incorrect answer at all. Again, if you're designing a guitar from scratch, it's your guitar. You do what you want. Now that leaves this area up here, and what I believe I ended up doing was just kind of going some amount past my peg head, and I wanted a room for my logo to be on the front. So I went out, a good amount, and I made, something like that shape, right? With our helpful little drawing of the tuner. Almost forgot what that was called. So that I can make sure that what I'm doing here avoids its function, or doesn't interrupt it. We'll draw another curve now, and I'll just kind of do that. So this is obviously a different shape than what we had before, but you get the point. I wouldn't stop here. As you can tell, this one's a little bit different. I kind of get specific with how I want it to look. And then from here we can kind of stretch things a little bit. On this side, I redrew it a little bit so that it had some nice curvature going on, but still did not impede the rotation of those tuners. So, a subtle bit of movement there. Okay, actually, I hate the way this looks, so I'm going to adjust this a little bit. Gumball is getting in our way there a little bit, but that's all right. Okay, that's a little better. At least to my eye, it's a little bit more of an aesthetically pleasing shape. I oftentimes get a little bit more specific. I try to make curves have some amount of regularity, where the point that's in the center, I'll make sure that it moves, off of whatever the straight line would be in a perpendicular way, like this. So yep, that's actually not where I want it to be. Just kind of makes things look, regular instead of random. And again, that's what I like. Doing it any different way from that is not incorrect by any means. I just had an idea here. I'm gonna rotate this so that they're in line this way, and just make sure that they can do that. I like to leave some parts of my designs kind of open to interpretation later, based on how I'm feeling. So if I wanted to put my tuners that way for whatever reason, I don't think I would. I don't like how that looks, but we can do that. So that's a peg head. I am now going to extract this the profile of this guitar, and we're going to just quickly make it work on this neck. Let's go back to the 2D view. That's a good spot. So if I don't explain exactly what I'm doing, just remember that you can pay attention to and watch the command window and pause or slow down the video so that you can get a look at what I'm doing. Maybe follow along or try it out yourself. Now we can kind of start laying things out. And I think I'm going to call it here for now. Just designing a peg head that you're happy with can be quite a wormhole that you can go down. It can take a lot of time. So what we're going to jump into next video, which will be next week most likely, is laying out the 2 dimensions of our neck in this orientation. So from the side view, and getting our volute shape down, which can be really tricky with a multi-scale guitar. And I intend to give you an example of a multi-scale, a non-multi-scale, and then a neck that doesn't have a volute, that just has a straight transition. But yeah, that's what we'll do. It's probably also worth mentioning that I put this together because we at least need the 2D shape of the body here to lay out our heel transition. So once we get to this point in the designing process, we really need the full 2D picture of both the neck and the body. And it doesn't matter if it's a set neck, a set through, a neck through guitar, bolt on, acoustic guitar, body joins the neck. It's critical that we have both components here. So, yeah, we'll end it there for today, and I'll catch you guys next week.